pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. At this time, I would like to call for a motion to approve the minutes from the April 18th meeting.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. In the matters presented today, the ZBA is a Board of Appeals of a decision by the city planner. Appeals to the Board of Adjustment may be taken by any person aggrieved or by any officer, department, or board of the city affected by any decision of the city planner. In exercising the powers set out in this section, the Board of Adjustment may, in conformity with the provisions of state law, reverse or affirm, wholly or partly, or may modify the order, requirement, decision, or determination as ought to be made, and to that end shall have all the powers of the city planner from whose action the appeal is taken. Positive action requires an affirmative vote by at least 4 of the 5 members. The Zoning Board of Adjustment decisions are final, and recourse from the Zoning Board of Adjustment decisions is to a court of law. For items scheduled for a public hearing, the board will hear first from staff, and then the applicant and the public will have an opportunity to comment on the agenda items. In accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, members of the board shall not discuss, deliberate, or make any decisions on topics not posted on the agenda item. Speakers should state their name and full address for the record, as well as their address and all remarks to the board. The board asks that public remarks be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Item 4A, public hearing. Consider a request for an appeal of the city planner's decision in interpreting the zoning ordinance, section 118.427A, district development chart as it applies to the approval of a building permit and site plan for the construction of a duplex on Lot 2 of the Johnson's Martinsville subdivision as described in a plat filed April the 10th, 2023, recorded in clerk's document number 2023-2530 of the real property records of Nacogdoches County, Texas. The property is located on the south side of Martinsville Street, approximately 220 feet from the intersection of Logansport Street and Martinsville Street. This request has been submitted by Philip Blackburn, case file ZBA 2024-03. The chair will now ask the city staff to present their comments to the board.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman, board members. My name is Juan Paulette. I'm the interim city planner. So this appeal is a claim that there is an error in the determination or the application of the requirements of the zoning regulation by the city planner. This appeal is not a request for a variance where the board may ignore the literal wording of the zoning ordinance. The question before you this afternoon is whether the decision of the city planner that the building permit for the construction of a duplex at 720 Martinsville Street is in compliance with the zoning ordinance. This section of the zoning ordinance specifically to this appeal is section 118.427A, district development chart. So this lot is located on the south side of Martinsville Street, approximately 220 feet from the Logansport and Martinsville Street intersection. The lot is currently undeveloped and is 0.2 acres. The property is zoned R4 multifamily and is surrounded by R4 with a mixture of single-family zoning and close proximity to the west, north, and south. Most of the surrounding properties have been developed for either single-family or duplex residential uses, with the exception of a couple of undeveloped lots to the east. This is a timeline of events that led to this appeal. On April 5th, 2023, staff approved the Johnson's Martinville Street subdivision plat. On July 13th, 2023, staff received an appeal for the approval of the subdivision plat by Mr. Philip Blackburn. On July 27th, 2023, staff wrote a letter to Mr. Blackburn stating that the appeal application was in excess of the 90-day time frame to file the appeal. On April 1st of this year, staff approved the building permit for the construction of a duplex on Lot 2 of the Johnson's Martinville subdivision plat. On May 7th, 2024, staff received an appeal for the approval of the building permit by Mr. Blackburn. This is the Johnson's Martinville subdivision plat that was recorded by staff on April 5th, 2023, and recorded in the county clerk's office on April 10th of 2023. The lot in question is Lot 2, which is the pie-shaped lot to the east. Just a little history on this lot. The original owner was Mr. Johnson. He subdivided the lot in this configuration and sold the properties to two different owners. The west side of the property is Lot 1 and has the original single-family residence on it. The lot has 85.8 feet of frontage along Martinsville Street and measures 211.3 feet along the western property line and 236.5 feet along the eastern property line. Section 990.122M of the subdivision ordinance states that subdivided lots that are 4 lots or less and front existing streets and do not require creation of new streets or extension of utilities are considered minor plats. These plats are delegated to the city planner and the city engineer for approval. This is the section of the ordinance that is subject to appeal. Section 118.427A outlines the development standards for all districts for building setbacks, lot dimensions, parking requirements, to name a few. More specifically, what is being appealed today is the lot width, which in this case for R4 multifamily is a minimum of 50 feet wide. Lot depth is not what is in question. As previously mentioned, this lot has over 200 feet of lot depth. The applicant contends that the approved lot of record does not meet the minimum lot dimensions as outlined in this section, claiming that the lot does not maintain the minimum lot width requirements of 50 feet throughout the 100 feet of minimum lot depth, therefore requiring a variance. The ordinance does not define how lot depth is measured. It is up to the city planner's judgment to determine based on the above development standards. Section 118 of the ordinance describes exactly how lot width is measured. It states that lot width means the width of a lot at the required front yard line or at the building line if such is established at a greater distance from the street than the required front yard line. In this case, and in most cases, the front building line and the front yard line are at the same distance from the street. For the R4 zoning district, the front building line is 20 feet from the front property line. This is the point where the lot width is measured. The definition does not state that the lot width has to be maintained throughout the minimum lot depth. Staff believes that the reason for this is because not all lots are rectangle or square in shape. With that being said, that is not the only matrix that staff uses to determine if the lot meets the development standards. We take into account required minimum lot density, which in this case is 5,000 square feet, and building setbacks, which for this zoning district are 20 feet in the front, 10 in the back, and 6 on the sides. So using the definition of lot width in the ordinance, we measured 20 feet from the front property line along each side of the lot, which are represented by the lines in blue. At that point, the lot width measured 77.3 feet across. Again, what is in question today is lot width as illustrated in this exhibit. The definition of lot width in the ordinance does not state that the lot needs to maintain the 50 feet lot width throughout the lot depth. This is a site plan that was approved by staff and shows that it meets all of the development requirements such as lot density, building setbacks, and required parking for the R4 zoning district. We also need to keep in mind that land use is not on the agenda. What is in question today is whether or not this lot meets the minimum lot width requirements. In addition, Article 6, Section 118, 423, General Requirements, outlines the requirements for issuing a building permit and states that building permits may be issued for lots that are part of a city-approved plat filed with the county. This is a picture of the subject property from Martinsville Street. And this is the picture of the original single-family residence on Lot 1 of the Johnson's Martinville subdivision plat. And here's some pictures of the eastern and western property line of the subject property. And then this is just a picture of the back of the lot. You can see how it comes to a point in the back. This slide shows the types of uses within the 200-foot notification area. Staff sent out 15 notices to those property owners and have received 7 responses in favor of the request. The additional responses received after the agenda was posted should be in your binders. So just to reiterate, lot width is measured at the front yard line or building line. The definition does not mention that lot width has to be maintained throughout the lot depth. Land use is not on the agenda for discussion. At this time, staff recommends affirming staff interpretation of the ordinance. And this concludes staff's presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions from the board.
Does the board have any questions? Thank you, Mr. Grant. At this time, we will open the public hearing, and we will hear from the applicant at this time. The applicant will present his case to the board. The chair asks the board to please hold all questions until after all public comments have been heard.
Yeah, I'm Philip Blackburn, 819 Logansport Street. And I just want to clarify one thing. Whenever the city planner said that there had been 7 responses to the letter sent out and they were in favor of the request, that means that they're in favor of my appeal. Is that correct? Yes, okay. Okay, of course, this is the ZBA hearing. 720 Martinsville Street is the lot in question. And this is the plat where the bigger lot was divided, creating this pie-shaped lot on the right, which is the lot in question. And I've given some dimensions there. It's kind of hard to see, you know, the original thing is like one of these. So it's been shrunk down to a small page, but I've given those dimensions so you can see them a little better. It's like 85.89 feet across the front there at the street, and of course up is north. The west boundary is 211.35, the east boundary is 236.53. And when I first saw this, and I have a bone to pick with the city a little bit, I think we need to change the way we do things because the planning department doesn't publish their work. And I didn't become aware that this thing had even been platted until I saw an ad that the thing was going to be for sale. And so by the time I was aware that the lot had been platted, it was past the 90 days. And so even if you wanted to file an appeal, it seems like the planning department should be required to publish their work. Otherwise, you'd have to have like a standing open records request every week to get the work that the planning department's doing so you can look at it and scrutinize it. Anyway, as soon as I became aware that the lot had been platted, according to this chart right here, for the R4, a duplex, you have 2,500 square feet per dwelling unit, so it's going to be 5,000. So that's where the 50 by 100 comes from. And when I looked at that on the big plat, I mean, I could measure that with a ruler. I didn't have to calculate. That's like 1/4 of an inch. And so it was off by a good bit as far as being 50 feet at the rear property line, or at the 100-foot mark. So I complained to the city planner at the time. The interim city planner at the time was Steve Bartlett. And the response I got was that, you can read it here, this is from his email that he sent, where he made this claim that from our definition section of lot width, you only have to measure the width of the lot at one point, which didn't make any sense to me. And that the lot width means the width of a lot at the required front yard line or the building line. So it's either or. So again, it's just one point. Front yard line being 20 feet from the street. Building line, like Juan said, a lot of times is the same as the front yard line, but it could be further back. But you can measure at either points, and just so long that's over a minimum of 50 feet, you're okay. So this is the definition they're talking about from section 118-1, our definitions. And, you know, I did my undergraduate in physics and math, so I'm kind of analytical about these things. And when I was in the math department, we had these theorems, and we were all the time proving theorems or disproving theorems. It's just, that's all they did over there. I didn't really like math as much as I did physics, where you actually could do something. But when you're going to prove a theorem, it's actually sometimes, well, most times it's harder to prove something is true than it is to prove it's false. Because if you're going to prove it's true, you have to prove it for every conceivable situation that may arise. Whereas to prove something false, you just have to show one contradiction, just one, and that wipes it out. So I'm looking at this thing and saying, is this really true that if you've got a lot, all you have to do is measure it at the front yard line or the building line, and just so long as it's 50 feet there, it's a conforming lot? That's the claim. Well, let's take a look at a couple of lots. Here's a lot. Let's take a closer look at the bottom is the street. So we're 50 feet wide at the street. Everything's cool. We go back to the front yard line, which is 20 feet back. It's still 50 feet wide. Well, that's all you got to worry about. What happens after that? You don't even worry about it. Then it narrows down to like 20 feet wide and goes back 220 feet. We've got the square footage down here at the bottom, 50 by 20, that's 1,000 square feet. Take off the 20, you got 200 going up by 20, that's 4,000 square feet, so we're at 5,000 square feet. By this logic, this is a conforming lot. I don't know what you do with it. By the time you take your setbacks off, you've got 6 feet off the sides, so it narrows us down to 8 feet, okay? And you take 10 feet off the back, so we've got like 190 by 8 feet. You don't have to get a variance, okay? This is a conforming lot. I guess you could build a shotgun house that's 8 foot wide and 190 feet deep. Does this make any sense to anybody? It doesn't make any sense to me. Here's another one. It's 150 feet wide at the street, so we got plenty of width. You only need 50. Go back 20 feet from the street at the front yard line, and it can be either the front yard line or the building line. So we're clear. This is the front yard line. We're more than 50 feet wide. And again, we go back 100 feet, 120 feet in this case. This time you've got even less room to work with. You've got maybe 90 feet by 8 feet that you can build on. So you can build a 720 square foot shotgun house. And again, you wouldn't need a variance for this. This, according to what the city planner was telling me, meets our district standard. You only have to measure the width at one spot. What happens after that doesn't matter. And it has the square footage necessary, the depth necessary, and all of that. When you go into our section 118-1, I just kind of focused in on the definitions that had to do with lot. And we got lot corner, lot double frontage, all these things. And then you got this weird lot width down at the bottom. No definition of lot depth. No definition of lot area. No definition of minimum lot depth or minimum lot width, which are two different things than just the lot width and the lot depth. So it's missing a lot of terms, I think, that could clarify things. But what is really weird is this lot width. I did an open records to find out when this came into our code. And it goes back to 1998. And I've asked everybody, people who are in the know about zoning and real estate, and I ask them, what is this definition all about? And they have no idea. Okay? They don't know what it means. And I actually copied verbatim this definition of lot width and stuck it in Google. And would you be surprised that I had quotes on it. So this is a quoted Google search. There was only one hit. That was the city of Nacogdoches. We're the only city in the country that has this as the definition of lot width. So then I took the quotes off. Let's broaden it out. Again, there was one hit, the city of Nacogdoches. We're the only city in the country that has a definition of lot width that even resembles this kind of thing. I mean, I've never seen a definition of lot width that was in terms of a front yard line and a building line. I mean, every definition of lot width I've ever seen had something to do with the side property lines and measuring a horizontal, something to do with that. I've never seen a definition of lot width like this, and everyone I've asked about it has no idea what it's about. So it gets us back to the original table. This table right here is our district standard. It's got all of them in there, A through I2, or your residential, R1 through R4. Where does this come from? I can tell you something about that. This chart right here comes from this. I had to go to the SFA library and dig this thing out. They dug in that back room for several hours. I had to leave and come back. But here's a copy of it. This is the original ordinance, original zoning ordinance for the city of Nacogdoches. And you go in here to the sections, and there's back then they didn't have it all in one table. Each section was separate. You had minimum lot area, minimum lot width. We can show you some of these. This is the minimum lot width section. Minimum lot depth. All these numbers you see here are what's in our table today. That's where it came from. I can tell you where this chart came from. That definition of lot width, it's anybody's guess where that came. Somebody made it up. No other city in the country has that definition for lot width. Minimum front yard, minimum side yard, minimum rear yard. All of this stuff we see in this chart right here came from the original zoning ordinance in 1970. So what do these mean? I can tell you what these mean. I'm in the real estate business. My brother and I have been in the real estate business probably since '92. So even before this crazy definition of lot width came in there, okay? And I can't tell you how many times I've had a discussion with a person and we've talked about these standards. You know, what's the difference in R1 and R2? Well, you know, an R1 is a 75 by 110 lot, whereas R2 is a little skinnier. It's a 60 by 100 lot. We use those terms over and over again. R3 and R4, that's a 50 by 100, 50 by 100, 50 by 100. I've said that so many times, you know, I wish I had a nickel for every time. What does that mean when you say a lot, like in this case for this R4, is 50 by 100? Well, to me, and anybody would come, it means it's 50, and these are your minimums. And these charts right here, this column about lot width and this column about lot depth are minimums. 50 by 100 means you have a minimum lot width of 50 over the course of a minimum lot depth of 100. By the same token, you look at it from the other way around. That's a minimum lot depth of 100 over the course of a minimum lot width of 50. That's where the 50 by 100 comes from. That's easy to understand. How does that apply to this lot? Well, what I've done here is I've annotated the graphic with a green dotted line. This green dotted line is the 100-foot depth mark. Measuring from the street, every point on that line is 100 feet away from the street. That is the 100-foot depth line. So for this lot, when I'm looking at it to determine if it fits, it actually conforms to our district standard of 50 by 100. I'm looking at the front lot line. I got plenty there. I'm not worried about that. It's like 85 feet or more. But it's what happens at the back of it, at this 100-foot depth line. That's where the problem is. And like I say, when I first looked at it, I mean, you can measure it with a ruler. You didn't have to do any fancy math. It was off by 1/4 of an inch. And an inch on here was 20 feet. So it was, I could tell it was off by 5 feet just with a ruler. Okay. But what you can do if, and like I say, I was a double major, physics and math. I thought it was kind of fun to actually calculate. You can actually calculate that. Now it's a whole page of trigonometry. I'm not going to bore you with the details. But the end result is this right here. Just like what I measured with the ruler, it is 45.013 feet wide. And these are true numbers. Those numbers you see on there, this was a recent survey. This is from an on-the-ground survey. They measured those distances. I used those distances that were a on-the-ground survey to derive this number right here. So this is accurate. Okay, so it's 45.013 feet at the 100-foot depth line. That does not conform to our standard. It has to be 50 feet back there, minimum. Well, you bring in this graphic right here that was from the city's presentation. And several things to say about this graphic here. There's not anything on it that's right. Starting with the fact that it's not to scale. I don't know what happened to it. It looks like when they brought it in PowerPoint, they like squeezed it in and like sandwiched it. The graphic you see on the right is true to scale. How can we tell? Well, let's go back to the original. Look at this point where the west property line hits the street. It almost makes a T. That's because, based on the numbers, the actual survey, that angle between that west property line and the street's like 96 degrees. It's almost a right angle. That's why it looks like a T. But when you look at the graphic that the city presented, it looks like it's about 60 degrees, okay? That doesn't affect things too bad, but I'm just saying that's a little odd that the graphic is squunched in. I'm not sure what that's all about. So the graphic to your right is true to scale. And what I did, I'm not going to worry about the blue up there where they were measuring or calculating the width of the front yard line. They came up with a number 77.3. That's not right. It's actually around 75. And I'll tell you why they're off on their measurements. I'm going to focus my attention on the back of the lot, which is where the problem is. And what I've done with this graphic is I've tried to recreate the red that they had there. And what they did to arrive at this 52 feet was they started up there at the street on the west side and went down the property line 100 feet. Then they went over there on the east side and went down the property line on that side 100 feet. Then they measured the distance between those two endpoints, and that's where they got the 52 feet. That's not how you do it, okay? We're talking about the width of the lot at 100 feet. Look where they ended up when they came down the property line. See, they're coming down that east property line at about a 63-degree angle. The way you measure lot depth is perpendicular to the street. This 100-foot green lot depth mark, the green dotted line, is parallel with the street. Look at their depth thing. It's not parallel with the street, okay? The reason why it's off and has been exaggerated up to 52 feet is because on the east boundary line, they're not 100 foot deep into the lot. They're only 88.84 feet deep into the lot. Whereas on the west side, actually on the west side, since this is 96 degrees, almost a right angle, okay, they're within 6 inches. They're actually 6 inches short of the 100-foot depth line, but we'll call it close enough for government work. It's not going to throw things off too much. So it's around 52 feet if you measure it that way, but that's not the way you measure it. You measure it at the 100-foot depth line. And when you measure that, we've already calculated it's 45.013 feet. How do I know that the way I'm measuring is the right way? Well, y'all just approved the minutes from the last hearing. The last hearing was in here back in April. It was about this lot right here that's at the end of Logansport Street. Been a lot of controversy about that lot. Been going on for 4 years. 1102 Logansport Street. The problem with that lot was that it wasn't deep enough. It was a non-conforming lot. Now, I calculated the depth of the lot from the calls in the deed. I calculated it was 89.1. Okay. Well, the surveyor went out and surveyed this lot. This is Finn Dyson, NT Sampson and Associates. He made the measurement, an on-the-ground survey. He didn't go with the calls from the deed, and that deed was from like 1890, okay? It was in veras, if anybody knows what I'm talking about. You had to convert from veras to feet. It was old school. But I did all those calculations. I came out at 89.1. He went out and did an on-the-ground survey. He measured that, hey, some of these rods I'm finding in the ground don't match it. And he even makes a note here. You know, the call was this, and what I measured with the rods was this, like here at the bottom. I'm at the bottom of the property line on this lot right here, where in the deed it called for 88 degrees west. He actually measured 85 degrees, 42 minutes, and 36, so it was a little off, okay? Well, he measured the depth of this lot, and he's a licensed by the state surveyor. He measured it at 88 feet. If you were going to measure it down the property line like we're doing here today, measuring your depth into the lot going at an angle, well, you would get 105 feet. That lot would have been conforming. Now, you got 5 feet to spare. Well, why in the minutes did the city report the depth of that lot? This is from the actual staff report back in April, but it's in your minutes there. You can look at your minutes where they report, again, the depth of that lot. They report the depth at 88 feet. So 2 months ago, the way we measured the depth of the lot was perpendicular to the street. You look at that graphic, if you measure perpendicular to the street, not at this angle that the southern property line goes off at like 60 degrees, perpendicular to the street, going back to the back property line, the surveyor measured 88 feet. That lot is 88 feet deep in a non-conforming lot. And it's been that way since it was created, back in the 1890s. So we just approved the minutes that was measuring that lot depth the same way I measure it. This graphic right here, if you measure perpendicular to the street, all the way back, to this 100-foot depth mark, and you measure the width of the property back there, it's 45 feet. That's 10%. You know, if it was just an inch or two, something you couldn't even see with a ruler, that'd be one thing. This is a 10% difference between our district standard and what we have. Let's see what kind of conclusions we can draw from this. We've got this definition of lot width that nobody knows where it came from and what it means and how to apply it. I asked, a lot of us asked, what would have possessed the city to introduce into our definition sections a definition like what happened? No one has any conceivable idea what happened that you would create a definition for lot width like this. On the other hand, we have this district standard that we've had since 1970. That makes a lot of common sense to people when you say the lot is 50 by 100. That means something. The lot is 60 by 100, 75 by 110. These concepts of minimum lot width over the course of minimum lot depth have been well defined since 1970. How do we bring these things together? Because it looks to me like they're conflicting right now. City planner's interpretation that you only have to measure the lot width at one point on the lot leads to absurd results. That can't be the proper interpretation of that lot width definition. I also was told this, and the city planner just referred to it, because whenever I got in touch last year with the city planner about the problem with this lot, and they're telling me about, oh, well, the planning department looked at that and made a decision, and it's already been taken over the courthouse over here. There's a lot of record over in the courthouse now. Can't do anything about it. Well, they left out this word down at the bottom called properly. You can do something about it. That process of declaring that lot a conforming lot was flawed. And I don't care if they have a lot of record over here at the court. It's just another non-conforming lot that has a lot of record. This is not a conforming lot. So just because the city staff took some action and did something doesn't mean it's not reversible. So we have a lot width at the 100-foot depth mark that's 45.013. Does not conform to the district standard, which says you have to have 50 feet minimum at the 100-foot depth mark. Their measurement was done improperly, and we saw that with the way the surveyor measured that lot depth, and the city planning department accepted that and actually reported to the zoning board of adjustment that the Bohack lot was only 88 feet. They measured the same way I'm measuring this lot depth. There can be no building permit issued for a non-conforming lot without receiving a variance from the zoning board of adjustment. Plat of record was not properly approved by the city, so we are still in play to be able to stop the construction on this lot. I'm not saying that's not the end of the world. What I'm saying is we have to follow our ordinances. This is a non-conforming lot. The proper procedure was for the owner of the property to apply for a variance to build on this non-conforming lot. That triggers other things. And you have to meet the criteria that is in our ordinances for being awarded a variance. And what's been happening here is we've just done an end run around all that. I request that the Zoning Board of Adjustment grant my appeal of the city planner's interpretation and approval. This is what gives the ability for someone to appeal the city planner's decision, is this section 118-100. Considering the City of Nacogdoches zoning ordinance section 118-427A, that's that big chart that's got all our district standards in it, regarding how to measure the width of a recorded plat. Plat is only 45.013 feet wide at the 100-foot depth mark, does not conform to the district standard of 50 feet wide at a 100-foot depth mark, thus requiring a variance before approval of requested building and site plan. So they got the cart before the horse. And I'm asking the Zoning Board of Adjustments to grant my appeal, which will basically say that that lot is non-conforming. That's not the end of the world. I mean, they have a process to deal with non-conforming lots. They have to apply for a variance, meet the criteria of the variance, and then be awarded a variance to build on that lot. I'm just asking that we do things according to our ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blackburn. The chair now asks the board to, Chair reminds all speakers to state their name and address, and that they have a 3-minute time limit. And during the public comment portion, the board shall not discuss, debate, or do anything that would consider to be an argument. Is there anyone in attendance at this time that would like to speak in support of this appeal?
Pat Costello, 1009 Logansport Street. Again, I'm here because I agree with Mr. Blackburn about the information that was presented. I do not agree with the city planner's literal interpretation, and I question why it wasn't presented to the Zoning Board of Adjustments. The Zoning Board of Adjustments is the group that grants variances or doesn't grant variance. If lot lines are not accurate, it is mandated by ordinance that the ZBA makes the decision. You have the authority. Mr. Blackburn has proven the measurements should have been presented to ZBA before anything else was done by the planning department. I ask that you grant the appeal, and I concur with the fact that, this is not the first time we've been here, and it would have been so much simpler if it had been recognized as a non-conforming lot and presented to you before we got to this point. I also have a problem in the fact that we had no access to the staff report until yesterday. And, we do a lot of work when we do all of this. Mr. Blackburn, much more than I do, because I don't have his math head. But we really have to do something about this, because your job is to do these interpretations. That's who you are. You're the authority. And it seems so many times lots are allowed to do, or they're allowed to do what they want. They're non-conforming. And they're not issued as non-conforming. When we get back to 1102, which we're all sick of, had that been done in the beginning, those 4 years of craziness would never have existed, because it was a non-conforming lot, but the city planning did not say that, and so it never came forward for an ordinance. I thank you for your work, and I would appreciate that you grant Mr. Blackburn's appeal.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Good afternoon. Mario Perica, 708 Martinsville. My wife Alex and I, we own the 94-year-old historic home that's next door. We're in full support of the appeal. The data in the case is very clear, and Philip has done a great job in presenting, and we fully support everything that's been presented. We also agree that the lot in question is non-conforming. We also tried to purchase this lot when we purchased the home last August of 2023. We were very adamant in trying to avoid this situation. Had we been able to purchase the lot, we would not be in this position. Yes, we just thank you very much for your help. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to the appeal?
Hi, my name is Alex Perica. Our house is 708 Martinsville. It was built in 1930. In 1970, the zoning board was created, and our home was considered on the outskirts of town at that time, and therefore it was zoned an R4. In 1995, I started college at SFA. I lived on Garner Street across Pecan Park in a similar style home and loved the charm. I moved away in 2005, only to come back nearly 20 years later when my daughter was looking at attending SFA and became smitten by my old town again. I graduated college here. I have friends here, and my daughter was born here. I love this town. All we want to is preserve the history and integrity of this neighborhood. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm Sammy Smith. I live at 1801 York, Nacogdoches. And I would like to say right off the bat that I'm in favor of Mr. Blackburn's appeal for a couple of reasons. One is I'm an old academic. I've been in college for a long time as a prof. And I've seen a lot of research where the data is manipulated to get the outcome that you want. And this appears to be a case of that in the 50-foot, trying to determine the width of that lot. It looked like it was manipulated to get the answer that would comply with city ordinance. If you use Mr. Blackburn's logic, it does not comply with city ordinance, and if it is approved, the appeal is not upheld, and he goes with this, it looks to me like he's violating city ordinance. Second reason is, I've said this before this group, 68% of the property in Nacogdoches is occupied by rental occupants. 32% is owner occupied. I looked at some interesting data today. There is only one city in the entire state of Texas that has a piece of data relative to rentals that compares to the city of Nacogdoches. There's only 2 cities in the state of Texas that are in the category of Nacogdoches relative to residential real estate. We're at the low bottom end of owner-occupied property in the city. I looked at the entire United States, and there's only like 10 cities in the entire United States with a population of above 25,000 that have an owner-occupied situation such as we've got in Nacogdoches. Now, what does that have to do with what we're looking at? It's been my experience over the last 4 or 5 years watching what's going on in the city relative to residential versus rental properties, that decisions are made in the favor of rental properties. We have more and more development going on in this county that's outside the city for single families, and more going on in the city for non-single family or multifamily rental properties. I do not like to see that. I don't like the situation that the city is in relative to that. And I would encourage you to vote with Mr. Blackburn's appeal. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak for Mr. Blackburn's appeal? There being none, I would like to ask if there's anybody in opposition to Mr. Blackburn's appeal.
How you doing? I'm Mario Wesley. Our office at 909 Pearl Street, and I'm the general contractor over there on the property. And the actual owner, purchased it. He didn't get it subdivided or anything. It was already subdivided, already had the zoning. So he just bought it as far as what the zoning was or what the city said that he can do with it. And I believe, just like Juan said, that all lots are not a perfect square, and I think that we should just go. We should go with the city engineer at the time, Steve Bartlett, which is a very smart and respectable man as far as his interpretation of it was conforming. And so as citizens, we got a process that we have to go through. The city approves, we go through the permit process. This actual property has went through all of the city required permit processes and have done nothing wrong. And so we would say that this appeal, which was done after the period of time in which he could have appealed, should be denied.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in opposition? All right, there being none, at this time, the public comment is allowed, closing the public hearing, and unless at the discretion of me, we will go to the board and we'll discuss.
Closing statement?
Beg your pardon?
Don't I get a rebuttal? Closing statement, the applicant gets a rebuttal.
Yes?
Yes, I'd like to make some comments. Again, Philip Blackburn, 819 Logansport Street. And of course, what he said was inaccurate. I mean, I filed this appeal in a timely manner. As soon as they filed for the building permit, I filed for the appeal, so I didn't drag around on that. And like I said, I was unaware of the plat because the planning department doesn't publish their work. So I didn't even find out about the original platting until after the 90 days had already expired. So that wasn't any fault of mine. I didn't drag my feet. I just didn't even know about it. Nobody knew about it. So I want to go over a couple of things. First thing I want to read is the planning department's mission. Mission of the planning department is to provide for a choice of land uses while protecting owners against the adverse effects of others' actions and to achieve economic prosperity while creating a more desirable community for all to live. Do you think that's what's going on here? Whenever they hid this thing, and then when you find out about it, you complain about, oh, it's too late. I have to wait almost a year to file an appeal. I had to wait for the building permit to be applied for. Then I could actually take some action after I became knowledgeable about it. This is not working in the effect to protect the neighborhood. It's working in an effort to help the developer, okay? Kind of the antithesis of what the mission of the planning department is all about. And I hasten to add that I think the reason why things like this are done is to circumvent our ordinances that are there to protect our neighborhoods. Because see, in this area, this is our future land use from the comprehensive plan. Future land use has that whole area yellow, which is single-family residential. And of course, what they're wanting to construct over there is a multifamily duplex. And they know that if they have to apply for a variance to do that, then there's some chance that that might not be approved because it's against the comprehensive plan. The very first thing on the list for getting a variance is whether it's in accordance with the comprehensive plan. So these things are done in a sleazy way, if you ask me. It's my opinion that this was a deliberate misinterpretation of our ordinances to help the developer at the expense of the neighborhood. And if this is allowed to stand over here on Martinsville Street, you're going to see this kind of stuff going on all over town. There'll be little pie-shaped lots popping up all over the place. This is kind of the test case. Are we going to allow a mockery to be made of our ordinances like this so that we have these little pie-shaped lots cropping up all over town so people can squeeze something else in between their lot and their neighbor? The ZBA has the authority to put the brakes on this right now. Y'all are kind of like the stopgap measure to protect the community from what the city may be doing. And your ruling, like you said, you're a quasi-judicial body. The city council can't overrule you. It's your interpretation of the ordinances is all that matters. It's not the city planner's interpretation of the ordinances. So do we want to interpret the ordinances that we don't have a district standard? Because that's the way they're being interpreted now. That lot width definition that's being applied to our district standard chart applies for every district standard of lot width, from agricultural to industrial. We don't have a district standard because it's been circumvented by this attempt to apply this crazy definition of lot width to our district standard and say that you only have to measure the lot width at one point on the lot. It doesn't make any sense to anybody, and I'm asking for common sense to prevail. There are several interpretations you can make. I'll just offer one. I think this definition of lot width really only applies to a conforming lot. After a piece of property has met the test of our district standard, that chart, and has been ruled as a conforming lot, then this definition of lot width, there's no problem with it. Because it doesn't matter if you measure the lot width at the front line or the building line, it's already been adjudicated that it's 50 by 100. What's happening here is they're getting the cart before the horse and trying to apply this definition before the lot has ever been determined whether it's conforming or not. and it undermines the whole principle of trying to determine if a lot is conforming or not. So I ask you that you grant my appeal for the city planner's interpretation. There could be other interpretations you can come up with. I think, I was at a workshop here a few weeks ago. This whole section of code has got problems. This 118. There was a planning department workshop with the city council. I attended it. And Nathan, the planning consultant, went on for 2 or 3 hours. There was not even any time for the city council to get involved in the discussion because he went on for 2 or 3 hours about all the problems. And said, oh, we're going to have more of these workshop meetings because we don't have time to get in the weeds right now to try to solve any of these problems. He went on for 2 or 3 hours with all the problems, and it was just over a few sections. And I think this is another thing that's a problem, this crazy definition of lot width that nobody can tell you where it came from or what it means. Add that to the list of the problems in this code that is harming the community. If this goes forward, it will harm our community, and y'all are the stopgap. Thank you.
Does the board have any questions for the applicant? Does the board have any questions for the city?
I would like to ask, how was that 52-foot measurement, how was that done? Was that done physically on site, or was that done on a computer?
I did it on computer. We have a program that has a measurement tool that will form to whatever scale the plat is, and I use that to do that measurement. But that was just my little rendering that I did. That's not what the previous staff used to make the determination of this lot. Staff can only work within the confines of the ordinance, and the ordinance only defines lot width, not lot depth, and it clearly defines lot width at that 20-foot point. Now, that's not the only matrix that we use to define or to see if that lot is conforming or, if it's worthy to be platted. There's other development standards that we use. We use the lot, what do you call it, the density, which if you multiply 50 by 100 is 5,000 square feet. So if it doesn't meet that lot density, then the city's not going to approve it. And there's also building setbacks that have to be met with that zoning district. If we feel that that lot's too shallow and it's not going to meet lot density, city staff will not approve it. The lots that Mr. Blackburn showed you, the L-shaped lots, there's no way that city staff would approve a lot in that configuration because it will not meet the building setbacks for development. The lot depth is left up to the interpretation of the city planner based on the development standards on how that's measured. In this case that we have here with this triangle-shaped lot, it has over 200 feet of lot depth. If you were to measure it the way Philip Blackburn says and perpendicular to Martinsville Street, measure 100 feet back, there's 100 feet to be measured. Now, it may not be 50 feet at the back. It very well could be, like Philip Blackburn said, 45 feet. But the ordinance does state that lot width is measured at the 20-foot, well, in this case, 20 feet building line or front yard line. So that's where we make that determination of lot width. That lot had 100 feet of lot depth. It has 200 feet of lot depth. But like you said, it's at 45 feet. But that's where the determination of the city planner comes into effect to say that, yes, it may be a little short in the back, and there's plenty of lots in the city that are probably short, that doesn't meet the lot width requirements for that zoning district, but are still developable because they will meet all the other building standards for that zoning district, which are the setbacks and lot density.
So what I'm understanding, and I understood from your initial presentation and what you said now, this is a judgment made by the city planner at the time. And
Yes,
So
because,
it's a matter of
again, lot depth is not defined in our ordinance,
It's a
so it's
matter of
left to the city planner to
Thank you.
make that judgment.
one other question that I had for you, you said you received 7 responses,
Yes,
and that was in addition to the 6, I believe I counted, that are in our book.
Mhm.
And all 7 were in support of the appeal,
correct.
and all 6 of these are in support of the appeal.
Yes, they were all in support.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I have a
Any
correction on
questions?
that. Those L-shaped lots did have the setbacks. They had the minimum square footage, they had the minimum width, the minimum depth, and the setbacks. It was 20 feet wide. The setbacks for R4 is 6 feet on the sides, 10 feet from the rear, 20 feet from the front. Those were conforming lots that I approved.
Realistically, I mean, you'd have a pencil-shaped house. And like I said, this is,
But it
This
would
is
be,
up
as you
to
had- as
the
you have
city planner.
admitted, it would be the opinion of the planner.
correct, which no planner would ever
Well, I
approve
don't know
those.
that we can say that.
True.
It meets the district standard. He has no choice but to approve it.
If I could say something, if I could please the board just to make a comment, is that just a reminder is that we're here to determine whether if the city planner at the time interpreted the ordinance and the definition of the ordinance correctly. And the only thing I think at this point that you as a body need to determine is that if it was interpreted correctly. We're not here to discuss those different drawings of what's going on. We're not here to say that what happened at Logansport, a couple of weeks ago, or what's been going on for 4 years. We're here just to discuss the interpretation of the lot definition of lot width. And I just want to make sure that we are focused on that and not anything else. Thank you.
May I have one more minute? And
Public hearing's been closed.
I know that, but
The public hearing is
problem
closed.
The hearing had been closed.
The problem is that because the previous planner,
public-
many of the non-conforming lots were never presented to the ZBA, and that was a big problem.
Well, then if the public hearing is closed, you should only be deliberating unless the board member is not interacting with the city staff.
We have to have a motion before we can deliberate.
The board can ask clarifying questions.
I think this
Yes.
is going way past clarifying.
Well, I think my questions were for clarification. I think maybe the staff has gone beyond my questions. And I'm satisfied with the answers to my questions.
Anyone else? Thank you, Ron. At this time, I would like to ask for a motion on the agenda item to approve or deny, and then I need a second.
I would move to approve the appeal of the city planner in the decision, case file ZBA 2024-03.
Do I have a second?
He moved to accept the appeal, is that what, that was his motion?
Yes.
I'll second that.
Okay. I have a motion to accept the appeal on, I have to look at this, sorry. ZBA 2024-03, and I have a second. All those in favor will take a vote by,
You can open for discussion.
beg your pardon?
We need discussion.
Open for
Okay,
discussion.
excuse me, discussion. Okay, any discussion that we need to do?
I'm still trying to look at what the ordinance itself says. I mean, the ordinance is unclear. Does not define lot depth. And again, we gotta remember we're voting on the interpretation only, not what we
Yes.
think it is, so. That's where I'm struggling right there.
I'm struggling with the same thing.
I'm just struggling.
You're struggling. Well, the interpretation is not very clear.
No, I don't agree with the definition of that, but that's what it is at this point, so.
Okay,
Can they appeal this?
beg your pardon?
Can they appeal this? The people,
No.
contractor?
With this, a decision that we make, then they'll have to go through recorded law. So the decision we make is final.
I'm like y'all, it's, it's what is the ordinance? But my problem is, it's, as he stated, I have a lot of respect for Steve Bartlett and for Warren too, but should every city planner has an option of interpreting it different, the way I understand it. Did he interpret it right on this particular one? I don't, that's where I'm struggling with it, but, he said, he actually said that it's up to your discretion.
The lot depth.
Measuring the lot depth.
The lot width. It has the definition of where the lot width is measured, which
Yes.
I'm not saying,
yes,
again, I'm not saying is
That's,
right, but that's what the definition is. Can we read this one more time just for us?
Yes, please.
Pursuant to the zoning ordinance, lot width is specifically measured at only one point
Excuse me a
on a
minute.
lot.
There's a lot of conversation between the committee, but we can't hear what you're saying.
Okay.
It should be loud enough to be recorded.
I'm reading the definition as the city has for lot width. Pursuant to the zoning ordinance, lot width is specifically measured at only one point on a lot. Section 118.1 definition provides the following definition for a lot width. Lot width means the width of the lot at the required front line or at the building line, if such is established at a greater distance from the street than the required front yard line. That's all the information we have available right here.
And that part is right then.
And that's what's at question today is the lot width, not the lot depth.
correct. The question for this appeal is the width of the lot.
Right.
And we have two different measures of the width of the lot at this point.
There's only one definition.
But we have two different measures presented to us.
How so?
Mr. Blackburn presented a measurement and the staff presented a measurement, and they're not the same.
There's only one.
May I, Jerry, would I be able to clarify, please, is that sir, and I'm sorry, I can't see your name, is that the two measurements that we're talking about is either at the front property line, which is what is defined within the ordinance, and or at the front building line. And one of the reasons why they have that, and this is again just from a planning perspective, is that if you go into a cul-de-sac shaped lots where the tips of lots go into a
Point of order,
cul-de-sac.
it's improper for the planning consultant to be deliberating with the board.
The board can ask questions.
I apologize. I just wanted to make sure that you understood that those are the two measurements that staff was looking at. I apologize.
Okay. At this time, I'll call for a final vote. Mr. King?
Do you mind reading the motion one more time, just so everybody will be clear?
Mr. King stated that he would like to move to grant the appeal. And we have a second. Mr. Sloan.
Are you gonna ask for all those in favor or all those opposed?
All right, who's in favor? I'll ask for a roll call vote then. Who's in favor? Grant the appeal. Okay, that's two. All right, and who's in denial to grant the appeal?
I'll say nay.
It's a 3-2 vote, and we have to have a 4-1, so it dies.
Correct.
At this time, I will adjourn the meeting.
Note the time, please. Madam Chairman, can you note the time, please?
Yes, it is 5:15. 5:15.